The 1970s were supposed to be the golden age of American muscle cars. Long hoods, big V8 engines, and aggressive styling. But the decade also brought the oil crisis, emissions restrictions, and rising insurance rates, turning some muscle cars into slow, heavy, and underwhelming machines. Fast forward to 2025, and some of these once promising rides have become worthless as investments or daily drivers. Here are 10 1970s muscle cars you should avoid buying today.
Dear viewer, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your support.
Number 10. When we think of the Packard name, we think of luxury and prestige. In the 1920s and early 1930s, Packard was one of the most respected car makers in America, producing stately automobiles that were often chauffeur-driven and owned by the wealthy elite. Their massive 12-cylinder cars symbolized power and elegance. But then came the Great Depression. As the economy collapsed, so did the market for high-end luxury cars. Many famous companies like Peerless and Pierce Arrow disappeared. Packard faced the same danger. To survive, it needed a car that appealed not just to the very rich, but to the growing professional middle class. That's where the Packard 120, introduced in 1935, came in. It was Packard's first junior model, priced far below the senior Packards, but still carrying the dignity of the name. Doctors, lawyers, shop owners, and businessmen could now aspire to own a Packard without being millionaires. The heart of the car was its straight-eight engine, displacing 282 cubic inches and making about 120 horsepower. But what really made it special was the way it was built. Packard engineers deliberately overbuilt it, giving it thick cylinder walls, heavy bearings, and an oversized cooling system. This meant the engine didn't just run smoothly, it ran for decades. At a time when most family cars wore out at 60,000 or 70,000 miles, the Packard 120 could double or triple that. Many of them were still on the road in the 1950s, still running strong. Beyond the engine, the 120 was technically advanced. It had hydraulic brakes, which were safer and more effective than mechanical brakes used by many rivals. In 1937, Packard added independent front suspension, giving it a smoother, more controlled ride than cars with solid front axles. These features made it not only durable, but genuinely pleasant to drive. And then there was the design. The 120 didn't look like a stripped-down car. It carried the same elegant Packard grille, the same long hood and flowing fenders. Buyers felt that they were getting a real Packard, not a cheap imitation. It was offered in a wide range of body styles: sedans, coupes, convertibles, even wagons, which broadened its appeal. The result was a sales triumph. In its first year alone, Packard sold nearly 50,000 of them, a staggering figure compared to its senior models. Quite simply, the 120 saved the company. While other luxury automakers folded, Packard thrived because of this car. But perhaps the most remarkable part of the story is how long these cars lasted. Taxi operators used them because they could take enormous mileage. Small-town doctors often drove the same 120 for 20 years. Mechanics regularly advised buyers that a used Packard 120 was a better investment than a brand new Chevrolet or Dodge, simply because it would last longer. So the legacy of the Packard 120 is clear. It wasn't just a survival strategy. It was a car that combined prestige, practicality, and unmatched durability. It proved that Packard could build not only luxurious showpieces, but also reliable workhorses for everyday life. And in doing so, it secured Packard's place in history as a company that built cars not just for the moment, but for the long haul. That's why when we talk about American cars that were built to last forever, the Packard 120 deserves a prominent place.
Number 9. When we look back at American automobiles of the mid-20th century, many models are remembered for flash, chrome, or horsepower. But sometimes the cars that truly mattered weren't the loudest or the fastest. They were the ones that simply kept families moving year after year. The Buick Special, built from 1936 through 1958, was one of those cars. Now, Buick in this era sat in a sweet spot within General Motors' hierarchy. Chevrolet was the entry-level brand, Cadillac the ultimate luxury. Buick's role was to provide something in between, upscale comfort and quality without Cadillac prices. And the Special, as Buick's volume seller, carried that mission proudly. Introduced in 1936, the Special was the most affordable Buick, but it was never cheap in feel. Under the hood sat Buick's famous straight-eight engine, a design that emphasized smoothness and durability. These were long, heavy blocks with generous displacement, and while they weren't race cars, they were nearly unbreakable. Mechanics often said that a Buick straight-eight would run forever if you just kept oil in it. Oilers discovered the same thing. With routine care, the Special's engine could easily outlast many of its period rivals from Dodge, Plymouth, or Ford. By the 1950s, Buick replaced the straight-eight with its new nailhead V8, and the Special benefited from this transition. The nailhead wasn't flashy on paper, but it was compact, torquey, and exceptionally reliable. Once again, Buick built a power plant that could endure years of family road trips, commutes, and cross-country vacations without complaint. But durability was only part of the story. The Special earned loyalty because it offered comfort and quality at a reasonable price. Its ride was soft, its interiors had an upscale feel, and buyers often remarked that it felt like a baby Roadmaster. This combination of reliability and comfort made it one of the most popular middle-class cars in America. For many families, the Special was the car that took them to work during the week, to church on Sunday, and on summer vacations down Route 66. The car's reputation was so solid that Specials often remained in service long after newer models appeared. In small towns across America, it was common to see a late 1930s or early 1940s Special still running well into the 1950s. These cars weren't pampered classics, they were workhorses kept alive because they simply wouldn't die. Even during the chrome-heavy 1950s, when styling often mattered more than substance, the Special stayed true to its purpose. It wasn't the flashiest Buick, you'd have to look to the Century or the Roadmaster for that, but it was the dependable one. It was the Buick you bought if you wanted something solid, something that could last a decade or more of hard use. By 1958, the Special had built a reputation that few cars in its class could match. It was the Buick that outlasted its rivals. Where many family cars of the 1940s and 1950s faded away quickly, Specials kept going, passed down from father to son, often with stories of incredible mileage and trouble-free service. So, when we talk about American cars that were built to last forever, the Buick Special deserves recognition. It may not have been the flashiest, the fastest, or the most glamorous, but it was the one that families trusted year after year. With rugged straight-eights, reliable V8s, and Buick's commitment to quality, the Special carved out its place in history as the dependable Buick family car, a car that often outlived the very rivals it once competed against.
Number 8. When people think of Chevrolet in the late 1950s and 1960s, the glamorous Impala or the sporty Chevelle usually come to mind. But beneath the spotlight, Chevrolet quietly built one of the most practical, durable, and hardworking cars of its time, the Biscayne. Introduced in 1958, the Biscayne was not designed to dazzle car showrooms. It was Chevrolet's stripped-down, no-frills, full-size sedan. In fact, it was often described as everything you need and nothing you don't. Buyers who chose the Biscayne weren't looking for chrome, luxury trim, or flashy styling. They wanted something that could take abuse, rack up miles, and keep costs low. Key traits of the Biscayne. Stripped-down design. Unlike the Impala with its gleaming chrome and decorative trim, the Biscayne was plain. Interiors were basic: vinyl seats, rubber floor mats, and minimal ornamentation. Even the exterior skipped much of the stainless trim and flair that Chevy's higher trims had. This simplicity wasn't a flaw, it was intentional. It made the Biscayne cheaper to buy and easier to maintain. Strong mechanical foundation. Underneath, the Biscayne shared the same GM B-body platform as the Impala and Bel Air. Engines ranged from the simple straight-six for budget buyers to tough small block and big block V8s.
the chassis and suspension were overbuilt for durability, since Chevy expected fleets and working-class families to choose the Biscayne. In many ways, the Biscayne was just as strong as the Impala, just without the bells and whistles. The taxi and police car favorite. Taxi fleets across America loved the Biscayne. Why? It was cheap to buy in bulk, easy to service since it used widely available Chevrolet parts, and nearly indestructible under constant stop-and-go city driving. Police departments also ordered Biscaynes, often with big block V8s hidden under their plain hoods. These sleeper Biscaynes looked like basic sedans, but could move with surprising speed. Affordable for the working class. Families who didn't want to spend on luxuries but needed a full-size, comfortable car often chose the Biscayne. It offered the same roominess and reliability as more expensive Chevrolets, but at a lower price point. For many Americans in the 1960s, owning a Biscayne meant dependable transportation without financial strain. Longevity and durability. The Biscayne earned a reputation for lasting far longer than expected. Owners routinely logged 200,000 to 300,000 miles with minimal mechanical issues. Taxi companies kept them running for years, often passing cars from city to city until they were utterly worn out. The engines, especially Chevrolet's small block V8, became legendary for their resilience. Even after production ended in 1972, many Biscaynes stayed on the road into the late 1980s and beyond, especially in rural areas where durability mattered more than looks. Legacy. While it never had the glamour of the Impala or the cult following of the Chevelle, the Biscayne represents something equally important: America's working-class car. It wasn't about style, status, or flash. It was about getting the job done. Today, Biscaynes are relatively rare at classic car shows because most of them were simply driven into the ground doing what they were built to do: work. In summary, the Chevrolet Biscayne 1958 to 1972 was one of the most dependable and hard-working full-size cars of its era. With its stripped-down nature, fleet popularity, and robust engineering, it proved that sometimes the simplest cars are the ones that last the longest.
Number 7. The Catalina first appeared in 1950 as a trim level on Pontiac's full-size cars. At the time, Pontiac was trying to carve out a stronger identity in General Motors' hierarchy, positioned above Chevrolet but below Oldsmobile, Buick, and Cadillac. The Catalina nameplate originally denoted the stylish, hardtop coupe body style, which became a sensation in the post-war years as American families craved cars that felt more modern and less utilitarian. By 1959, Pontiac promoted the Catalina into its own full-fledged model line, positioned as the entry-level full-size car in the Pontiac lineup. One of the defining characteristics of the Catalina was its dependable V8 power plants. Beginning in the mid-1950s, Pontiac rolled out a series of overhead valve V8s that became famous for their durability and broad torque curve. These engines weren't just powerful, they were also long-lived. Owners found that with proper maintenance, Catalinas could easily surpass 100,000 miles, which was impressive in the 1950s and 1960s. The Catalina filled a sweet spot in the market. It was affordable, practical, and stylish enough to appeal to the middle class while also tough enough to handle daily abuse. Taxi fleets, police departments, and working-class families all found it to be a reliable workhorse. Unlike Pontiac's flashier Bonneville or Grand Prix, the Catalina carried less chrome and fewer luxury features, which meant less to break, less to maintain, and lower costs of ownership. Another reason the Catalina stood out was its versatility. Buyers could spec it in multiple body styles: 2- and 4-door sedans, hardtops, convertibles, and station wagons. Whether you were a suburban family in need of space, a young buyer looking for a stylish coupe, or even a municipality buying fleet cars, the Catalina could be adapted to the role.
And we can't forget the performance side of the Catalina's story. In the early 1960s, Pontiac's wide-track advertising campaign emphasized handling and road stability, and the Catalina played a major part in that image. These cars weren't just staid family cruisers. With the right options, they could be serious performers. A Catalina with a big 389 or even 421 cubic inch V8 under the hood could surprise rivals on the street or the drag strip, all while serving as the family's daily driver. By the 1970s, the Catalina continued as Pontiac's bread-and-butter full-size car. Though it grew larger and heavier with the trends of the time, it still retained its reputation as a dependable, rugged car that owners could count on. Many Catalinas lived long second lives in the hands of budget-conscious owners well into the 1880s, a testament to their solid construction and hardy V8 engines. In short, the Pontiac Catalina wasn't the flashiest car Pontiac ever built, but it was perhaps its most important. It was the car that millions of Americans drove every day, the one that gave Pontiac its reputation for reliability and style without extravagance. It's one of those unsung heroes of the American road, not necessarily collectible like a GTO or Bonneville, but loved and remembered by families and drivers who relied on it for decades.
Number 6. When we think about American cars of the 1950s and 1960s, our minds often drift to flashy chrome, tail fins, and flashy styling. But behind all that glamour, there were cars designed with a different purpose. Cars built to be practical, reliable, and durable. One of the best examples of this approach was the Plymouth Savoy. Introduced in the early 1950s, the Savoy occupied the entry-level full-size spot in Plymouth's lineup, beneath the Belvedere and Fury. It was never meant to be a head-turner. Instead, Plymouth aimed it at budget-conscious buyers, families who needed a dependable car that could handle daily life without breaking the bank. And that meant simplicity. Mechanically, the Savoy was a straightforward car. It used inline-6 and small V8 engines, depending on the year, paired with basic transmissions that were easy to service. There were no exotic engineering experiments or fragile components. Every part was designed to last, and maintenance was simple. If a repair was needed, parts were widely available and inexpensive, a key advantage for the middle-class buyers who made up the bulk of Plymouth's customer base. This simplicity made the Savoy ideal for high-mileage, heavy-duty work. Fleet buyers quickly realized that the Savoy could be trusted for taxis, police cars, and other commercial uses. City taxi companies in particular loved it because it could withstand hundreds of thousands of miles of stop-and-go driving without major mechanical problems. Police departments across the country also spec'd Savoys with larger engines for patrol duty, knowing that their reliability would not fail under demanding conditions. But the Savoy's strength wasn't limited to fleets. Everyday families found that it could last for decades with regular maintenance. The steel-bodied chassis was tough and resilient, and the engines, though modest in power compared to muscle cars or luxury sedans, were practically indestructible. Many Savoys from the 1950s and 1960s were still running in the 1970s and 1980s, not as collectible classics, but as hard-working transportation that faithfully served its owners. Styling-wise, the Savoy was conservative. It didn't have the flashy fins of a Fury or the high-trim interiors of a Belvedere. But that understated design had a benefit. Less trim meant fewer parts to maintain or replace, and less risk of cosmetic damage over years of hard use. Buyers got function over form, and they appreciated it. The legacy of the Plymouth Savoy is clear. It wasn't a car designed to impress your neighbors or win awards. It was a car designed to do its job day in and day out.
For budget-minded buyers, families, and commercial fleets, the Savoy proved that simplicity and durability could outlast style and trendiness. In fact, its reputation for toughness made it one of the most trusted and widely used cars of its time. In conclusion, the Plymouth Savoy exemplifies a key truth about American automotive history. Sometimes the most unassuming cars are the ones that last the longest. With reliable drivetrains, simple mechanicals, and a reputation for toughness, the Savoy earned its place on roads, in taxi fleets, and in police garages for decades, a true workhorse of the 1950s and 1960s.
Number 5. When examining American cars built for reliability rather than flash, few models stand out like the Dodge Coronet. Introduced in 1949, the Coronet became Dodge's mainstay full-size car for nearly 3 decades, earning a reputation for durability, practicality, and everyday dependability. The Coronet came at a time when Dodge was trying to define itself in the post-war automotive landscape. Ford and Chevrolet dominated the lower end of the market, while Chrysler, Plymouth, and DeSoto aimed to offer something more substantial. Dodge needed a car that could appeal to families, fleets, and budget-conscious buyers who wanted a solid, long-lasting vehicle, and the Coronet was the answer. Mechanically, the Coronet's appeal was simple: reliable engines and well-built drivetrains. In the early years, many Coronets came with Dodge's straight-six engines, which were robust and easy to maintain. By the mid-1950s, Chrysler introduced their durable slant six, which became legendary for longevity. With an innovative 30-degree incline in the block, the slant six offered better cooling and reduced engine wear, which allowed these engines to run hundreds of thousands of miles with minimal maintenance. In addition to the slant six, Dodge offered V8 engines in the Coronet lineup, including the small block and later the larger 361 and 383 cubic inch units. These V8s were powerful enough for highway driving, but built with Chrysler's engineering discipline, making them reliable workhorses rather than high-strung performance engines. Many owners found that these engines could last decades, far outliving some of their more glamorous competitors. But durability wasn't just about the engine. The Coronet featured heavy-duty suspension and frames designed to withstand rough roads, family use, and even light commercial service. This made it a favorite among taxi operators and small business fleets, who valued a car that could keep running day after day with minimal downtime. Road reliability, easy serviceability, and robust construction made the Coronet a go-to for anyone who needed a dependable daily driver. Styling-wise, the Coronet followed Dodge's practical approach. It wasn't flashy like Chrysler's top-of-the-line models or some of the era's flamboyant competitors, but it carried a solid traditional design that aged gracefully. Families appreciated the spacious interiors, straightforward controls, and a ride quality that balanced comfort and stability. Unlike some of the fancier full-size cars, Coronets didn't have fragile trim or overly complicated systems that could fail with age. Everything was designed to last under real-world conditions. The Coronet's longevity is remarkable. By the 1970s, older Coronets were still common on American roads, sometimes serving their third or fourth owner. They became a familiar sight as used cars for new families, taxis, or service vehicles. Mechanics frequently praised the combination of Chrysler's slant six and V8 engines, noting that a well-maintained Coronet could outlast many newer cars, proving that reliability mattered more than flash in the long run. In conclusion, the Dodge Coronet represents a classic example of American durability. It was never the most stylish nor the fastest, but it delivered consistent, dependable service for decades. With robust V8s and slant six engines, strong frames, and practical design, the Coronet earned a reputation as a trusted family car and fleet workhorse. Its decades-long presence on the road is a testament to Dodge's ability to build a car that could endure, a true member of the Built to Last Forever Club. Number 4. When most people think of the Ford Torino, their minds immediately go to muscle cars, the GT, Cobra, and Torino Talladega trims built to compete on the street and track. But beneath the muscle car mythology, the Torino was also one of Ford's most dependable full-size family cars of the late 1960s and 1970s, especially in its base trims.
Introduced in 1968, the Torino replaced the Fairline as Ford's intermediate full-size offering. It was designed to fill a wide market segment, families who wanted a comfortable, roomy car for everyday life, but who also appreciated stylish design. Even in its base models, the Torino combined durable mechanicals with practical construction, making it a favorite among buyers who valued reliability over flash. Durable engines and drivetrains. Base Torinos typically came with Ford's inline-six or smaller V8 engines, which were straightforward and easy to maintain. These engines were not designed for high-performance racing, but they were engineered to run for hundreds of thousands of miles. Ford's robust 302, 351, and 390 cubic-inch V8s offered both reliability and power for highway cruising or suburban errands. The transmissions, whether manual or automatic, were equally well built, designed to handle everyday use without frequent breakdowns. What made the Torino stand out in terms of longevity was that mechanics could easily service almost every component. Parts were plentiful, inexpensive, and durable. Families and fleet operators alike found that a well-maintained Torino could serve reliably for decades, which is why many of these cars survived well into the late 1970s and early 1980s, long after they left the showroom. Practical construction and ride. The Torino's chassis and suspension were built to be tough. Even the base models featured a strong frame, front coil springs, and rear leaf springs that could carry family loads or heavy grocery hauls without complaint. The ride quality was balanced, firm enough for control, but cushioned enough for comfort on long drives. Interiors, while simple compared to GT or Cobra trims, were spacious and functional, making the Torino a practical daily driver for families across the country. Fleet and everyday use. Base Torinos became popular with taxi services, police departments, and even small business fleets. Why? They were affordable, mechanically simple, and capable of enduring heavy use. Unlike some flashy muscle cars of the era, a base Torino could be driven hard every day without constant repairs. Fleet operators especially valued the Ford inline-sixes and V8s, which rarely failed even under high mileage conditions. Styling that aged well. Even though the base Torino lacked the racing stripes and sport mirrors of its muscle siblings, it still benefited from Ford's clean, modern design language. The long hood, balanced proportions, and restrained chrome trim made it a car that looked respectable for years. Unlike more fashion-driven cars of the early 1970s, the Torino's styling didn't age poorly, which added to its appeal as a long-lasting family car. Legacy and longevity. By the mid-1970s, the Torino had established a reputation for reliability, practicality, and durability. Families, fleet buyers, and even enthusiasts who needed a dependable daily driver knew that a base Torino would survive decades of use with minimal fuss. While muscle-trimmed Torinos gained the spotlight in pop culture, the humble base models quietly earned their place as some of Ford's most long-lasting cars of the era. In conclusion, the Ford Torino is often remembered for speed and style, but its enduring value lies in reliability and versatility. With durable engines, straightforward drivetrains, strong construction, and practical interiors, the base Torino proved that a car could be both stylish and built to last for years, earning a deserved spot in the history of dependable American automobiles.
Number 3. When we think of the late 1950s and 1960s, the Pontiac Bonneville immediately comes to mind as a symbol of American luxury and performance. Introduced in 1957 as Pontiac's top-tier full-size model, the Bonneville combined cutting-edge style, comfort, and power. But beyond its flashy looks and high-performance reputation, it was also a car built to last well beyond the average lifespan of its peers. The Bonneville was Pontiac's response to the growing demand for upscale cars that didn't reach Cadillac prices. With its long, wide body, dramatic tail fins, and abundance of chrome, it certainly made a statement. Yet beneath the glamorous exterior, Pontiac engineers focused on mechanical reliability, particularly in the powertrain.
Early Bonnevilles were equipped with Pontiac's robust V8 engines, which delivered smooth, ample power without being overly complex. These engines were known for their durability, especially when maintained regularly, and they provided the kind of torque and longevity that allowed owners to enjoy highway cruising for years. Pontiac didn't just focus on engines. The Bonneville's drivetrain and suspension were designed for comfort and resilience. Heavy-duty frames, strong rear axles, and fully adjustable suspensions meant that the car could carry passengers and luggage for decades with minimal issues. In an era when roads were rougher and maintenance standards varied widely, the Bonneville's solid engineering gave owners peace of mind. Another factor contributing to its longevity was Pontiac's attention to quality interior construction. While the Bonneville offered luxury trim, plush seating, and advanced features for the time, the components were built to endure daily use. Switches, levers, and controls were not delicate ornaments. They were engineered for frequent use. Many Bonnevilles from the late 1950s and 1960s were still functional decades later, not just as classic showpieces, but as actual highway cruisers. The Bonneville also had versatility that supported long-term ownership. It was offered as sedans, coupes, convertibles, and hardtops, giving families, professionals, and fleet buyers options that could meet their needs. Taxi operators and city drivers occasionally adopted Bonnevilles, especially larger models with reliable V8s, because they could handle heavy mileage while maintaining comfort. By the 1960s, Pontiac had refined the Bonneville with larger V8s, updated suspensions, and improved braking systems. These upgrades made the car even more robust for long-term driving, while maintaining the luxury and performance that buyers expected. Highway cruising became one of the Bonneville's trademarks. Owners found it capable of long stretches without mechanical issues, which was impressive for a car that often exceeded 5,000 pounds in weight. In conclusion, the Pontiac Bonneville wasn't just about style and performance. While it dazzled onlookers with its chrome, fins, and speed, it quietly proved itself as a durable, long-lasting American car. Its robust V8 engines, strong drivetrains, and solid construction allowed many Bonnevilles to outlive expectations, becoming highway cruisers and dependable family cars for decades. It stands as an example of how luxury and longevity can coexist, a car built to impress and endure.
Number 2. When it comes to vehicles built to last forever, few models combine utility, toughness, and longevity, like the GMC Suburban Carrier of the 1940s through the 1960s. Often overshadowed by the more glamorous cars of the era, the Suburban Carrier quietly earned a reputation as one of the most dependable full-size utility vehicles on the road. The Suburban Carrier was GMC's version of Chevrolet's Suburban, but with a focus on heavier-duty truck components. While it shared basic architecture with its Chevy cousin, GMC emphasized durability, using reinforced frames, stronger axles, and rugged suspension systems capable of handling the rigors of both work and family use. This construction made the Suburban Carrier ideal for applications where failure was not an option: military transport, commercial fleets, and rural family travel. Mechanically, the Suburban Carrier relied on GMC's tried-and-true inline-six engines and later small-block V8s, paired with robust transmissions designed to handle heavy loads. These drivetrains were simple by design: fewer moving parts, easy access for maintenance, and engineered for longevity. Mechanics often praise Suburban Carriers for their reliability, noting that a properly maintained model could survive decades of demanding service, whether hauling cargo, towing trailers, or carrying passengers. One of the vehicle's key strengths was versatility. The Suburban Carrier could serve as a family wagon, a commercial delivery vehicle, or even a military transport.
During World War II and in the post-war period, GMC vehicles were often pressed into military service or adapted for government use. The robust construction and spacious interior meant that the vehicle could carry both personnel and equipment safely over rough roads or long distances. The Suburban Carrier's longevity was also enhanced by its rugged simplicity. Unlike modern vehicles filled with electronics or delicate components, the Suburban was built around basic mechanical principles that could be repaired with minimal tools. This made it extremely popular in rural areas, small towns, and commercial fleets. Taxi and shuttle services occasionally adopted early Suburban Carriers for their durable, high-capacity cabins, knowing these vehicles could operate almost indefinitely with routine maintenance. By the 1960s, the Suburban Carrier had cemented its reputation as a long-lasting family and commercial vehicle. Its heavy-duty truck chassis made it resistant to wear and tear that would quickly sideline lighter vehicles. Families in rural or suburban areas could count on it for decades of service, transporting children, hauling goods, or simply serving as a reliable road companion. In summary, the GMC Suburban Carrier, 1940s through 1960s, exemplifies a vehicle built to endure. With its heavy-duty construction, durable engines, and versatile design, it became a trusted partner for families, businesses, and military operations alike. While flashy cars of the era faded into history, many Suburban Carriers survived into the modern era, still running or preserved as a testament to GMC's commitment to durability.
Number 1. When most people think of the Ford Granada, flashy styling and luxury rarely come to mind. Introduced in 1975 as Ford's midsize offering for the growing market of practical, budget-conscious buyers, the Granada was designed to be reliable, simple, and long-lasting. Despite its unassuming appearance, the Granada became a favorite for commuters, families, and fleet buyers who valued durability over flair. The Granada's appeal started with its mechanical simplicity. Early models came with inline six-cylinder engines, later complemented by small-block V8 options. These engines were not designed to break speed records or win muscle car awards. They were built to run reliably for hundreds of thousands of miles. Combined with basic transmissions, either 3-speed manual or 3-speed automatic, the Granada was easy to service, and replacement parts were inexpensive and widely available. This simplicity translated into impressive long-term durability. Many Granada owners reported vehicles lasting well over 200,000 miles with minimal issues. The engines were forgiving, and the drivetrain components were robust enough to handle daily commuting, long highway drives, or family errands without premature failure. Mechanics frequently praised the Granada as a car that could survive decades of hard use, which was uncommon for mid-size cars of the era. The chassis and suspension contributed further to its longevity. With a well-engineered frame, reliable coil spring front suspension, and leaf spring rear, the Granada handled weight and road wear better than many competitors. It offered a comfortable ride for passengers while resisting the structural fatigue that plagued cheaper or overly complex cars from the 1970s. Another factor in the Granada's reputation was its versatility. It served as a family sedan, a practical commuter car, and even as a fleet vehicle for small businesses or government agencies. While it lacked the glamour or status of luxury models, it delivered dependable service in virtually any role. Fleet operators particularly appreciated the Granada's reliability, low operating costs, and ease of repair, which meant these cars could remain on the road far longer than some more expensive alternatives. Styling-wise, the Granada was intentionally modest. It didn't have the sweeping lines of a Cadillac or the sporty appeal of a Mustang, but that plain design worked in its favor, reducing the risk of cosmetic damage and the need for expensive trim repairs. In many ways, the Granada's conservative design was part of its long-term survivability. Fewer fragile parts, fewer headaches for owners. By the early 1980s, the Granada had proven itself as a workhorse of the midsize segment. While Ford phased it out in favor of newer models, the cars themselves continued to serve faithfully in homes, businesses, and fleets across America.
Many surviving examples from the late 1970s were still on the road well into the 1990s, a testament to the combination of mechanical simplicity, durability, and practical design. In conclusion, the Ford Granada 1975 to 1982 may not have been glamorous or showy, but it embodied the principle of built to last. With reliable six-cylinder and small-block V8 engines, a strong chassis, and straightforward mechanicals, the Granada proved itself as one of the most durable mid-size cars of its era, a budget-friendly commuter that exceeded expectations for longevity and reliability.